Have you ever stood in front of a mirror, smiling, even though inside you were screaming? That's not maturity. That's intentional burial. Wrapped in politeness, you're not silent because you're strong. You're silent because you're tired. Tired of being correct. Tired of being okay. But every time you're silent, a piece of your soul quietly slips away from you. Like steam gathering in a lens. Transparent. Beautiful. And then blurred. Nietzsche once said, "When you don't confront, you can't be yourself." And you? Are you choosing peace, or are you mute? If you've ever nodded to keep the peace, but tears fell behind closed doors, comment, "I will not be silent again." Like if you've ever burned yourself to keep kindness. And share this video. Because someone out there is also evaporating, little by little, just to be accepted. Have you ever thought silence was a virtue? Noble. Mature. But in reality, it's just paint on a cracked wall. It's your way of naming your fear. In a beautiful word, you don't say it. Not because you're cool, but because you're afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being looked at with strange eyes, afraid of being the annoying one. At a party full of fake nice people, you want to keep things quiet. But silence doesn't calm things down. It just buries an unnamed anger. You've sat in a meeting, wanting to protest, but then nodding. You've composed a protest message and deleted it. You've smiled at someone who just hurt you, just so you don't kill the mood. Every time you do that, a part of your true voice disappears. No one buries you. You bury yourself. Little by little. In the grave, called politeness. Nietzsche called it silent resentment. A small poison, taken every day. It does not shout. It breathes. Silently. In the dreams, you do not tell. In the look you try to keep cheerful. In the dead of night, where you lie with your heart still beating with pain, you think you are mature because you do not react. No. You have subtly submitted. You call it okay. But in fact, you are just wearing a fiberglass armor. Beautiful, transparent, fragile, and you become a safe target for every invisible knife. One day, you explode. But not with the person who hurt you. With someone who is not involved. Because you can no longer distinguish between real anger and accumulated anger. Silence is a slow death. It doesn't kill you right away. It just makes you disappear while you're still alive. At some point, you don't know what you like. You don't know what you hate. You just know. To be okay. Silence is not a virtue. It's a survival strategy. And every survival strategy, if prolonged too much, becomes spiritual suicide. If you've ever swallowed your words just to save face for someone else, leave. I've been silent for too long. If you've ever laughed when you wanted to scream, comment, "I won't bury my voice anymore." And share this video, because somewhere out there, there's someone who's losing themselves too. Every sentence, every word, every time they don't speak up, you say, "Let's keep quiet." But it never calms down. It just moves inward and starts to eat you up from there. Silence doesn't calm the storm. It just makes you a corked bottle. Then you open it and it all comes out. Without warning, you think you're in control, but you're actually censoring yourself, breaking yourself, capping yourself, erasing yourself. Silence isn't calm. It's fear, trained by praise. You've been taught to be nice, reasonable, not disruptive. Then you put duct tape over your mouth and call it morality. You smile when you don't want to, nod when you're offended, and tell yourself, I'm okay. But the truth is, every time you don't say what you need to say, you're trading temporary peace for a mental debt, and it will be paid back in depression, insomnia, stress, or unjustified indifference to the innocent. Silence doesn't kill anger. It just prolongs it. In your eyes, in your co-stars, in your crooked smiles, one day, you'll find yourself existing without being present, sitting in a room with your loved ones, but no one really sees you, because you disappeared long ago. The moment you started being silent to be loved, you don't have to scream, but you do have to stop pretending. Stop laughing when you want to cry. Stop being patient as a moral obligation. Stop being the nice guy as a full-time role. No, doesn't make you ugly. It makes you clear. It doesn't create conflict. It creates boundaries. If you've ever chosen to be silent because you're afraid of being disliked, right. I'm no longer afraid of offending. If you've ever been stiff to keep the peace, comment, I'm not pretending to be stable anymore. And share this video, because someone out there is also tied up in the barbed wire called gentleness. And maybe your voice will be the first blade that helps them cut the wire themselves. Do you think you're moral? Do you believe that kindness will lead to peace? So why are you exhausted? Why is it that the more humble you are, the more you are pushed around? Why is it that the more gentle you are, the more people look down on you? Nietzsche had a name for it. Slave morality. It's a morality that doesn't liberate you. It tames you with praise. Praises you for being reasonable when you don't fight back. Praises you for being polite when you silently swallow your anger. You call it self-control. But really, you're giving yourself up bit by bit. You learn to nod in the face of injustice. You learn to smile when you're hurt. You learn to say, it's okay, even when your heart is screaming. Each time, you trade your identity for image. And gradually, you become a nice but invisible version. You smile to be accepted. You are gentle, so as not to be left behind. You swallow criticism for fear of breaking the fragile peace. But what is the price? A sleepless night. A party that you have to force yourself to act. Avoid after each doing favors that no one appreciates. Slave morality does not teach you to love others. It teaches you to please everyone, except yourself. You do not live authentically. You live like a psychological mask. Clean. Standard. Emotionless. You think you are loved because you are kind. But in fact, you are only being kept for convenience. Not everyone can bear this truth. But if you're listening, perhaps you've begun to doubt the good you've been trying to be. Nietzsche isn't telling you to be mean. He's just telling you to be sane. Because if you spend your life trying to be nice, you'll never be respected. If you've ever struggled to be nice, right, I've had enough. If you want to be real today, comment, I don't need to be nice anymore, and share this video. Because there are too many people who are living nice, only to trade freedom for approval. There are pains that don't scream. They don't cry out. They don't bleed on the outside. They just exist. Quietly. Like mold in a closed room. Invisible at first, but slowly suffocating. They grow in silence. between the things you want to say and don't say, between the pain you swallow and the smiles you force. And every day, they eat away at the walls inside you. How many times have you said, "It's okay," even when it's not okay? How many times have you smiled at someone who makes you feel small, just to avoid a scene, or to maintain the illusion of harmony? How many times have you typed a text, then deleted it? Started a sentence, then gone silent? That's not self-control. That's not maturity. That's resentment. Not directed at someone else. At yourself. In the part of you that wants to speak and is silenced. Nietzsche called it the most subtle poison of the soul. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just little drops, falling steadily into your inner reservoir, like acid dripping into a crystal glass. It doesn't shatter. It corrodes, quietly, consistently, until what was once clear becomes turbid. You live like an adult. You behave. You keep your cool. You don't react. You think you're noble. But in reality, you're paying the price in unexpressed pain. And that pain doesn't just stay there. It changes. It builds. It leaks out, but never in the direction it came from. You yell at someone who doesn't deserve it. You withdraw from conversations for no apparent reason. You isolate yourself. You sigh when no one is looking. You feel tired. Not physically, but mentally. You don't understand why you feel empty. Why the things that once lit you up now feel dull. Even though you're doing everything right. You're being nice. You're being kind. You're being who everyone tells you to be. But deep down, you're not living. You're surviving on leftover emotions. Because the main dish, your truth, has never been served. Unspoken anger doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear in the name of politeness. It morphs into depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, digestive problems, insomnia, emotional numbness, sadness without explanation, frustration without reason. It becomes a flow with no outlet, a storm trapped in a bottle, a letter you keep in your chest, unsent for years. A voice trapped in your throat, with no key, just silence. The scariest thing is not the explosion. It's the absence of emotion. It's when you no longer feel angry, not happy, not sad, not yearning, not excited. Just resignation. Just the empty. Okay, you say to everyone. And eventually to yourself. Over and over, until it becomes a lullaby to your own disconnection. You become a transparent coffin, beautiful, calm, untouched, but inside, there is a death, a slow burial of your voice, your boundaries, your fire, and no one noticed, because you looked good. Because your smile still worked. Because you never caused a scene. You did the right thing, but you're not alive. You're rehearsing for the performance of a lifetime. Called acceptance. Nietzsche didn't teach revenge. He taught transformation. He didn't say, explode. He said, transcend. Let anger be your compass. Not your weapon. Let it point you back to what matters. To the boundary you can't hold. To the truth you've buried. To the version of you that still remembers how to say no when acknowledged. Anger becomes a message. When denied, it becomes poison. So stop letting it rot in your chest. Stop drinking poison and calling it politeness. Stop calling silence peace just because it's quiet. If you've ever laughed when you were breaking inside, comment. For too long, I've called silence peace. If you're ready to break the act today, to say what you've never been allowed to say, to feel what you've been told to hide, write, I no longer let anger turn into poison, and share this video. Not to watch, because there's someone out there right now also drinking acid and calling it water. Let your voice be the antidote. There's a cruel truth you've been avoiding. Not because you're weak, but because you've been trained to smile through it. Here it is. You're not okay. Not because something broke you overnight, but because little by little, piece by piece, you've disappeared beneath layers of forced kindness and silent compromise. You've become so good at pretending to be okay that you almost believe it yourself. You smile on cue. You nod at the right moment. You laugh at what you don't find funny. You say, I'm fine, as if it's your name, and no one notices. Because you play your part so well. But inside, everything has been slowly wilting. Your eyes don't shine anymore. Your voice no longer carries weight. Your body curls inwards, as if it's trying to protect something that's constantly being bruised. You're present in the room, but not in your life. You exist, but not like yourself. You exist as a miniature version. Polished, polite, pleasing, but hollow. Nietzsche once said, don't look for the truth outside. Go where you fear most. And where is that? Really? Not in danger, not in conflict, but in the mirror. In the version of yourself you've refused to face. You've locked yourself in a box of being good. Because being good got your approval. Being good gets you love. Or at least the illusion of it. Being good makes things easier, but here's the cost. Every time you chose silence over the truth, you lost part of your voice. Every time you swallowed discomfort just to be accepted, you lost a part of your self-esteem. You became a character in a story someone else wrote, smiling on stage while your soul sits backstage. Gagged and bound, you're afraid of losing love, afraid of being labeled too much, too emotional, too complicated. So you became less visible, less opinionated, less alive. You wear a mask of being easy to love, because the world taught you that your rawness was inconvenient. But the truth, you're not easy to love. You're just easy to manipulate when you're scared of being alone. A single disapproving glance, and you shrink. A light criticism, and you collapse into self-doubt. You've been living in a way that makes everyone comfortable. Everyone except you. That's not mature. That's not virtue. That's surrender. Painted with the colors of politeness and framed as emotional intelligence. But maturity isn't about being agreeable. It's about being authentic. The truth doesn't require you to be perfect. It only requires you to be honest. And sometimes, the most radical honesty is, I'm not okay. I'm exhausted from acting. I don't want to be nice anymore if it costs me my voice. Rebirth doesn't begin in light. It begins in the shadow. In that split second where you dare to look at the fracture and say, yes, that's me. And I'm done pretending it isn't. You don't become whole by adding more. You become whole by stripping away everything that isn't true. You don't need permission. Not from your parents. Not from your friends. Not from society. And not from that disenchanted voice inside you that says, "But what if they leave?" Because here's the deeper truth. If they only love the version of you that plays along, they were never loving you in the first place. And if you can't even stand beside your truth, who will? Stop asking for permission to feel. Stop apologizing for being real. Stop rehearsing a version of yourself that you wouldn't even want to be friends with. When you choose truth, you don't become selfish. You become free. If you've ever smiled to avoid being hated, comment, "I don't ask for permission anymore." If you've hidden your truth for fear of rejection, write, "I choose honesty," even when it means standing alone. And share this video. Not to go viral, but because someone out there is slowly dying in a role they never chose. And they don't need a hero. They just need one person to say, "You're allowed to be real." You think you're silent because you're strong. No. You're silent because you're afraid. Not afraid of death. Not afraid of being alone. But afraid of something deeper. Fear of rejection. Fear of being judged. Fear of becoming unlovable. And to avoid that, you start nodding when you disagree, smiling when you're hurting, pretending to be okay. Even when you're broken, you choose safety over honesty, choosing acceptance over understanding. You tweak your words, squeeze your expressions, bend the truth, just to fit someone else's moral compass. But at some point, you don't know what you're living for anymore. You look in the mirror and see someone who's lovable, kind, but terrifyingly alien. You sit among your friends, but it feels like you're sitting next to an audience. And you're the lead actor in a play you never chose. Nietzsche once said, "Freedom begins when you stop fearing the eyes of others." But you haven't begun yet. You still adjust yourself to fit the room. You still give up your seat to everyone and sit in the empty seat in your lap. You don't say, "I'm sad," for fear of being seen as weak. You don't say, "I'm angry," for fear of being seen as complicated. You don't say, "I disagree," for fear of being left behind. You live in a transparent glass cage. Beautiful, kind, pleasant, but inside is a person who no longer dares to bang on the glass. You're not weak because you're afraid. You're weak because you let fear guide you. You don't have to break the glass today. Just say what you've been hiding. Name it. Write, "I'm afraid of rejection, but I'm going to speak up. I'm afraid of being hated, but I'm going to be real. I'd rather lose them than lose myself." If you've ever been silent because you were afraid of losing someone, comment, "I've lived in a glass cage for too long." If you dare to take a small step today, write, "I'm not going to let fear guide me anymore." And share this video. Because there are people out there who are living just to be kept. And they need someone to dare to be real first. You always want to be true to yourself, but you always ask for permission to do so. You ask your parents for permission to think differently. You ask society for permission to live differently. You ask your friends for permission to be different. And worst of all, you ask yourself permission every time you feel different. You live as if authenticity is a privilege, as if you have to meet a moral standard to be true to yourself. You ask yourself, if I tell the truth, will people still love me? If I do what I want, will I be left behind? And since these questions have no safe answers, you choose to retreat, to pretend, to compromise. You call it wisdom. But in reality, It is a mental fracture. Nietzsche doesn't say you have to rebel. He says, becoming yourself is not about creating a new person, but about stripping off the masks you never chose. Rebirth doesn't begin in the light. It begins in the dark, where you whisper, I've been living wrongly for too long. You look in the mirror, and you see a nice, stable person, but you no longer know who you are. You're living the right life, with propriety, with courtesy, with expectations, with only one thing wrong. Your being. You weren't born to keep the peace. You were born to have a soul. Rebirth doesn't need fireworks. It doesn't need declarations. It just needs a quiet, but irreversible act. You stop asking permission. Stop asking permission to be sad, to be angry, to disagree, to walk away when you feel diminished, to stand back when others are going in the wrong direction. You don't need anyone to support you. You just need to accept yourself. Rebirth is not about adding something new. It's about removing everything that isn't you. Every role, every slogan, every empty compliment. And when you take it all back, there's only one question left. Who am I? When I no longer play a role for anyone. If you've ever asked for permission to be true, right. Eonce lost myself. To be kept. If you choose to be yourself again today, comment, I am reborn, without any approval. And share this video, because somewhere there's a soul standing in front of the mirror, and it only takes one person to dare to say it first. I no longer ask for permission. I am not saving you. It is just slowing down the bombing. Every time you are comfortable, you plant another seed of anger. Every time you keep quiet to be liked, you lose a part of your soul. And when you trade your identity for peace, you stop living. You just exist. Nietzsche once said, the strong do not avoid the truth. They become it. And you do not need permission to live. You only have a choice. Either remain silent and reflect, or speak up and start living again. Thank you for coming back at last. Not everyone has the courage to listen to the truth about themselves. If you have come this far, it means you are ready to step out of the darkness of silence. Leave a comment. I choose truth, not obedience. If this video resonates with you, please like and share, not just to escape, but so you don't have to go through the rebirth process alone. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more in-depth topics. Because from now on, we will no longer be silent.